Looking back.
This don't know why I did that. This article comes from the History Channel and details how on this day, the day of recording, not the day of broadcast, April 6th, in 1806, the Mormon Church was established by one Mr. Joseph Smith. The article gives us a little wait your turn. The article gives us a little bit of a biography on Mr. Smith. Born in Vermont in 1805, Smith claimed in 1823 that he had been visited by a Christian angel named Moroni, who spoke to him of an ancient Hebrew text that had been lost for 1,500 years. The holy text related to the story of Israelite peoples who had lived in America in ancient times. Over the course of the next 6 years, Smith dictated an English translation of this text to his wife and other scribes, and in 1830, the Book of Mormon was published. In the same year, Smith founded the Church of Christ, later known as the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, in Fayette. Now, I have a lot to say about Mormonism, but I'm going to hand it over to Jason, seeing as he was so enthusiastic to jump straight in.
I gotta tell you, I honestly, I don't know a whole lot about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, other than, you know, things that South Park taught us, or the very beginning of the Book of Mormon that was sitting in a hotel room that I stayed at once, or even the Book of Mormon itself that created my favorite song of Hasta Diga Ibawai. We can curse in other languages too. Yeah, we'll be fine. But it was so weird. So I didn't read the whole book when I was sitting in that hotel, because it was so funny to me. It was so hilarious that it started out, you know, with somebody trying to request some civic records, then escalated into murder, and then public theft of or theft of public records in that order. And I'm just like, I'm like, I don't know where we go from there. So yeah, I mean that's the most I know about Mormonism. You know, except of course where it ranks on the bite model. You know, it's not fully a cult, but there's a lot of culty things in there. So Josh, what do you know?
Again, I'm not an expert on this. I'm pretty sure that Richard is. That Richard's scholarly. I can't say the words today, and I haven't even drank. He's got books behind him. I got DVDs. So like we're coming from this from different angles.
I got both eyes.
I had like my best friend in elementary school was Mormon, and I just thought that meant that he was really nice. I didn't really know much about religions. It's just like they happen to be like the nicest people on earth, which is what they're known for. They're known for love bombing people. And because of that's the way to like knock you off your guard and make you more accepting of this kind of thing. Like these people are the nicest people on earth. I'm going to hang out with them. Maybe hear what that Joseph Smith guy is all about, which I didn't know his name until South Park. So that's that's where I got my education on this too. But the whole legend, like he was a known con artist. This is like the first religion that's made where we're like writing records on stuff. So like we can trace back what happened with Joseph Smith and see that this is bull. Like this is a story that like is flagrantly right out in the open fake. Like some religions, like you can get some wiggle room on it because we don't know about Jesus. He could be there, he could not. But this Joseph Smith, we know he made this up. He's up there with L. Ron Hubbard in absurdities, and like the whole translator golden plates. It's from I think it was like a foreign a form of an Egyptian that only he could translate through his seer stone. So like nobody can verify while he's reading off these plates, and just there's racism in the church. That's what I know it for more than anything is the racism. The most absurd thing I ever heard about, and I heard about this all the way back in high school. This was one of the few things I knew from before South Park told it to me, was he wrote down, I don't think he believed any of this because he made it up, but he said that Native Americans used to be white, and if they became Mormons, they would be able to become white again. And it wasn't until recently that even black people were let into the church. It's like nice on the outside. It's got a really nice shiny wrapper. They look like they'd be great to hang out with, but this is a horrible, very like controlling religion. You can't have coffee. You can't have caffeine. This it's controlling to the point where most of the Christians I know seem reasonable in comparison.
They are certainly that. Oh wow, there's so much. Yeah, I've never seen the South Park episode, by the way, or the Book of Mormon musical.
Yeah,
my knowledge of what was covered in that is very limited, down to kind of like people singing "dum dum."
I mean,
dum, dum, dum.
according to that episode, this is what Mormons truly believe. Although they didn't go into the magic underwear, which, yay.
Yeah, that's the thing.
I actually don't know anything about the magic underwear. You want to shine some light on that, Richard?
Shine some light where the sun don't shine, something like that.
Yeah. when I think when the I'm not sure exactly at what stage it comes, but at some stage when you've been accepted as a Mormon, when you've had all the like love bombing and whatnot from the very, and they are absolutely lovely people to talk to, Mormons, they really are. When you've had all the love bombing and they've finally brainwashed you to go into join the cult, because I am going to call it what it is. Okay. There comes a stage where you have to wear these ridiculous undergarments that can best be described as large silken sacks. And this is something. This is something that I don't know the details of why they do it, to be quite honest with you.
Well, they get the silken sack, and like, you want to have a roll in the sack. So it's for setting up the puns. Apparently, the Mormons are love bombing and pun bombing people.
Yeah, if you'd actually seen a pair of these things in person, you would realize it's nothing to do with rolling in the sack. They are hideous.
Don't kink shame
me. Joseph Smith himself was a very interesting character, in as it wasn't only
Brigham Young was the other big historical Mormon
they were
person
they were the kind of brothers in arms at the beginning, and
the torchbearer after he died. Yep.
Joseph Smith wasn't only the kind of as Jason alluded to earlier, done for fraud when he was alive, but he also died in prison. It wasn't just a case of early on in his career he was a bit dodgy and then he was a reformed character. It was, really, in and out of prison quite a lot, from what I can gather. But one thing about him is it did something called the Book of Abraham, and it was some papyri that I gather he'd got from somewhere. I'm not sure of the exact details, but it claimed that he'd translated them. And they claimed they contained writings of Abraham and Joseph in Egypt, and it translated these things as Mormon texts, and kind of gone part of the kind of conviction to his followers that it was authentic and it'd been like blessed by God. And it
wasn't the reason why there could be like little errors here and there was because he was only issuing himself as the translator of these texts instead of having it come directly through God. He's using the seer stone and everything to just translate. So he has like a something you can pull. Oh, there was a mistake here. That was just a that was just bad information from the stones I was translating it from.
Oh, yeah, it's worse than that though. It's actually worse than that, because what happens is that when anybody calls him out, or when the original person, and I don't remember his name, that he was dictating the book to, lost because he was trying to check on Joseph Smith, lost the what he wrote down. So he translated it again, and there were more errors. And it's like, well, wait a minute, how is this? You've got even more translation errors. It's like, oh, well, see, what happened was you didn't have faith, and so the lack of faith caused the translation to be different. And it's like, are you kidding me? How do you not see this as the grifter that it is? But they move forward.
Yeah, the thing is, but when you're so close to something like that, people don't necessarily see it. That's how con men work. You know, when someone's convinced you to such a degree that, you know, you can excuse mistakes, then, you know, this is how stuff like this work. But the Book of Abraham specifically wasn't just a case of small translation errors. The Book of Abraham was it's been translated for us, fortunately and unfortunately for moments. We still have the original papyri that he claimed he translated from, and it's just an Egyptian funerary text. It's got nothing to do at all with anything. This isn't from the Book of Mormon. This isn't part of the Book of Mormon, which Jason was just talking about. This is an actual papyrus that it came into Joseph Smith's possession, and he was trying to kind of lead people to believe. But it's nothing at all to do with what he claimed it was. The guy was just a con man.
And they're trying to like revamp their image lately. We had the other article from the Associated Press where it was a bunch of, again, reading in between the lines kind of thing. And like they're saying, they're done with their homophobia. They have no problem. You're not supposed to be picking on gay people anymore. They're not going to allow gay marriage. Don't get them wrong. They're not all for that, but they're not going to be openly horrible to them, which, again, reading in between the lines, they push the fact that the racism is going down because they got a black woman in a place of in a leadership role, not a top leadership role, only over other women, because apparently women can't be in top spots of the church. It's just like all these little things that they're like trying to sell us on, that the Mormon church is updating with the times and they're good now. The racism's gone, the homophobia is gone, the misogyny is gone, and it's still there. It's just like under a different look now. It's just different phrasing. It seems like that's what churches are great at in these days, is they know how to sell it to the newspaper and sell it to the press to make it sound good. And you got to, if you're like readers, most readers today, you're reading the headlines and you're going like, this is awesome. I'm happy to hear that they're treating people with respect, but you got to read in between lines. You got to read the words that they're not saying and like what they're leaving out, and like the careful ways that they have of being smart with their words so they can still hold on to those horrible bigotry.
Yeah,
I gotta
and
say,
racism
though,
is.
I gotta say that I knew a good friend while I was in the Navy who was Mormon, was getting out, and who later came out as a trans man. And they confided into me, saying that everything about their faith, about their church that they had been in all their life, completely turned their back on him. And it was disturbing to see, because he still believed at that time, and you know, I wasn't gonna be the one to convince, you know, oh, you should just go and you know, become an atheist and all that. You know, that's a very personal and deep journey that, you know, a person needs to make. But again, that's where I was saying, is like, they would disagree with how the church has changed. Now, again, this is, you know, a little more than a decade ago, and maybe they're trying to clean up their image. But come on, the damage has already been done. Same thing with the Catholic, Christian churches, you know, and a lot of different faiths. The damage has already been done. I don't care how you try to mitigate that.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how nice you are to people if you're voting against their interests. So the Mormon Church is still against gay marriage. They're going to do everything they can to stop it because it's against the religious doctrine. But they're going to say hi to them and wave to them on the streets, and that's not meaningful. You can have the nicest persona in the world and still be an a-hole, and that's kind of what I'm seeing here.
Yeah, I personally know someone who is gay, and who is in a straight marriage, who is gay and Mormon and is in a straight marriage because they feel that they went to conversion therapy through the church, anti-conversion therapy through the church, and they've been convinced that they are straight, and they're now married with a child. It's something that shouldn't happen ever. And the reason the church is being nice at the minute is very, very simple. They're hemorrhaging people. The Mormon church is hemorrhaging people, and they've gone through a kind of a case, and there was I don't know who it was, but there was an old episode of the Atheist Experience where one of the hosts said he'd been to Utah to the museum, to the Mormon Museum in Utah, and it'd been, and then a few years later he went back, and he said it had been totally rebranded, and that's my understanding as well. They've tried to push away this image of this like 18th century, 19th century Joseph Smith, new religion, and try and reinvent themselves as an authentic kind of school of Christianity. They're pushing the Jesus thing a lot more now than they used to. Jesus is becoming a very central part of what they're doing, a lot of their imagery, a lot of the marketing, because they want to rebrand as Christians, as and I don't want to commit the not true Scotsman fallacy by saying they're not Christians, because to me they are. But
They aren't Scotsmen, though.
No, they are not. But they are. Excuse me. They are trying to rebrand to get this like kind of mainstream Christian audience, I think, because they're losing so many members themselves. But going back to, I wanted to touch on racism a little bit that Josh brought up, and this touches on our last article where we were talking about the 1970s being not too far in the distant past. It wasn't until 1978, let that sink in, until black men of African descent were allowed to be ordained into the church's lay priesthood. And the church's lay priesthood simply means that you're a regular member of the church. That's all it means. So it's not like a great big, ordination ceremony. Black men were not allowed to be ordinary members of the church of LDS until 1978. They weren't allowed to get married to white women in the church, and they were excluded all in leadership roles, and they were excluded from performing rituals. And temple ordinances and endowment in the Mormon church are necessary for the highest level of salvation. So what the church was essentially saying was that black people were not good enough to achieve salvation. And that did not end till 1978. And here's the interesting thing with the Mormon church. The Mormon church is something a little bit like we know the Pope can make kind of small decisions on behalf of doctrine in the Catholic Church. The living leaders of the Mormon church are the people who decide God's word. They are direct conduits for God. And it seems funny to me that at a time in 1978 when social movement had kicked in from the late 50s and 60s, great social change had come in. Black people of African descent were being accepted much more in society. Not enough, but much more than they had been previously. And it just seems funny at that time when this, after 10, 15 years after this great shift in social change had occurred, that God decided to speak to the leaders of the Mormon church and then decide that it was okay for black people to become Mormons, fully practicing Mormons. I mean, you couldn't write it if you tried to.
Yeah, just kind of how we see tap dancing on all the other shows when somebody tries to bring up, slavery in Exodus and Leviticus. So I think we're getting close to the end of this segment. But Josh, do you also have a final thought?
I am admittedly not an expert on the Mormon religion. I did some research for this. I came across articles about how they were taking natives through the slave trade and indoctrinating them that way. So they had their own way of trying to do cultural genocide against the native people only in Salt Lake City. So Mormon religion, I guess it was founded on this day, but not something to be happy about coming about.
No. All right.